We come back to the Palestinians, and I had so many discussions when I was Foreign Secretary with Netanyahu about the need for Israel to embrace in the future a two-state solution between Israelis and Palestinians. And he always said, well, that's just not available. That is just, you can't ever trust the Palestinian leadership. They will always turn on Israel. They will always be corrupt.
Good morning, Times Radio Breakfast, 9:05, 7 days a week at this time. We talk to two people with perspective to look at the day's news. Tuesdays are special, however. We talk to our leaders panel. That is William Hague, of course, who used to be leader of the opposition and Foreign Secretary. Morning to you, William.
Good morning.
And Kezia Dugdale, who used to be the Scottish Labour leader. Morning, Kezia.
Good morning.
This morning, Israel begins a ground offensive in Lebanon. Benjamin Netanyahu thinks it could be the start of a new era where war is over and Iran and Israel become friends. Could he be right? That sounds hugely unlikely from where we are at the minute. Maybe we're just going to be plunged into yet another cycle of violence.
And I'm here at the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. How well is the leadership contest working? Will the Conservatives end up with the right person to take on Labour?
And believers in the Sabbath are fighting to stop Tesco's opening on Sunday in the Isle of Lewis. Should we fight back against consumerism?
Now, the war between Israel and its enemies is often framed as a never-ending conflict which is escalating towards disaster. But Benjamin Netanyahu sent an open message to the people of Iran. It threatened destruction, but also a future of peace. So is Netanyahu onto something here? Could Israel win this conflict, destroy Hamas and Hezbollah, and end up with the Iranian regime itself falling? Is that a scenario that the West should welcome and support? Israel is destroying the fighters of Hamas and Hezbollah, and it is brutal. But what is the kind of prognosis here? William Hague, how effective is it to address the people of Iran? Is Benjamin Netanyahu kind of promising them a future, or is he actually trying to rouse them?
Well, he's making this case. I'm often a critic of Netanyahu. A reasonable point, of course, that if there was a different regime in a different type of government in Iran, well, then there could be peace in the region. That is true. That's not going to be achieved by him giving speeches about it, though, or because that's really an internal matter of Iran. Probably one day the Iranian people will bring down the terrible theocratic, tyrannical system that rules over them. But that's not going to be because of anything Israel does. And we don't know whether that would be next year or in 20 years' time. So it's not bad to have that vision, but it's not going to be brought about by military action in Lebanon. There are reasons to sympathize with the Israelis here on this particular action, because northern Israel is not habitable. Many towns have had to be evacuated. Hezbollah are in southern Lebanon, where they're not meant to be under UN resolutions. So the Israelis are trying to sort that out. But it's a bit too grandiose to say it's going to change the whole balance of power in the Middle East. Israel would have to do other things that Netanyahu doesn't want to do, like accept there should be a Palestinian state. And that even though that's not possible at the moment, that's something that Israel should be working for and leaving the political and physical space for. So yeah, it's a nice thing to say, but it is not going to achieve it just by saying it.
Is it naive to believe Netanyahu here when he says that I just want everyone to love each other, I just want peace everywhere, I want us all to be friends? Because there's always been a narrative running that certain situations enduring play to his advantage. So how much should we believe him when he says that he wants everyone to be friends?
Well, not totally. No, you make a fair point, because again, we come back to the Palestinians. And I had so many discussions when I was Foreign Secretary with Netanyahu about the need for Israel to embrace in the future a two-state solution between Israelis and Palestinians. And he always said, well, that's just not available. That is just, you can't ever trust the Palestinian leadership. They will always turn on Israel. They will always be corrupt. We will never be able to deal with them. That's always been his argument. But in order to provide for that in the future, it's important for Israeli settlers not to try to take over the West Bank. for there to be, even now in Gaza, attempts to set up some sort of Palestinian authority to try to get Arab nations involved in creating a Palestinian leadership over time that could do business, that could make peace with Israel. And Netanyahu and his allies in Israel haven't tended to leave the space for that or to encourage that at all. They have tried to divide the Palestinian leadership so that it couldn't be strong and even get into that position. And they have allowed continued settlements on the West Bank. So we shouldn't really fall for the rhetoric on that. As you can tell from what I'm saying, I have a rather more sympathy with him in the confrontation with Iran, which is a terrible regime that has sponsored terror. Hezbollah is a violent and dangerous organization. But the wider vision of peace includes peace with Palestinians. And that was, of course, missing, I think, from Netanyahu's remarks.
Kezia, how concerned are you about this limited, targeted action that's happened overnight without any coordination or any kind of blessing, in inverted commas, of course, from any approval from America?
And when we talk about naivety, I do feel it's a little naive to take Israel at face value here when they say that this will be limited and targeted, given what we've seen in recent weeks and months in Gaza, where it was anything but. I find it quite striking that we're prepared to accept that at face value when it comes to Lebanon, but knew that that wasn't going to be the case every time Israel was challenged over its actions in Gaza. And of course, it'll be after the event and potentially after something more serious or more intrusive has happened that we turn and try and point the finger and say that that was too much. So it just feels like we're going round and round in circles.
And therefore, what do you do about it then? I mean, maybe there's nothing to be done. Maybe this whole exercise, whenever we discuss this, is just an exercise in hand-wringing, because it feels like everything is outside of the control of people.
Well, to me, it feels futile until after the US presidential elections, because it strikes me that you can't ignore the extent to which that plays into this, and the kind of unwillingness of US political figures to be stronger with Israel about its actions when required, because of the implications that will have in domestic politics in the United States. It just feels like we're in a holding pattern until then, and Netanyahu knows that.
Can Netanyahu hold, William, a buffer zone in southern Lebanon where effectively it becomes another occupation? Is that on the table, do you feel?
Well, I think that will always be very difficult. And this is where the Israelis have gone wrong before, in two previous wars, in 1982 and 2006, of a wider ground invasion of Lebanon, in which they then got bogged down and lost the support of world opinion and ended up with a stronger enemy in the years that followed. So it does appear that in many ways they've learned the lessons of that, but we'll see over the coming days. They do have a formidably enhanced military capability in terms of precision targeting. And I've written about this in my column this morning. Really an exponential move forward in military capabilities, combining data analytics and artificial intelligence with a lot of conventional military power. Which really means they do get the individual Hezbollah rocket launchers, as well as being able to kill almost the entire leadership in recent days. So this is an even more formidable Israeli military machine. And if with that precision, they can do immense damage to Hezbollah in south of the Litani River and guarantee that area without having to occupy it all with Israeli forces, well, then they are in with a chance of a successful military operation, and that would be very different from those two previous wars.